Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming to the virtual symposium on the mainstreaming of extremism in US states and other public institutions. I wanted to let you know how this is going to work today and tomorrow. We have 2 panels scheduled for each day, and after each panel, we invited some experts in the area, some people who are out in the field, to come and respond to what was said at the panel, in the panel. Now, we had put out a call for papers last fall asking for original research. So what you'll be seeing today are 4 themes that we sort of loosely tied together. The first one is entitled From the Shadows to Spotlight, the Growing Visibility of Extremist Ideologies. And what I'm going to do is I want, as speakers come on to give their presentations, I'm going to ask each of them to introduce themselves so that I don't spend any time wasting your time listening to my introduction to each of the people. So, and then when they're done, we'll open it up to questions and answers. You'll see that there is a Q&A at the bottom of your screens. And so feel free to type that in at any point. And I'll join back in at the end of the presentations to ask the Q&As.
Hi, I'm Anneliese Schenk-Day. I am a second-year PhD student at Ohio State in sociology. And as Laura just said, I will be presenting a project I'm working on with Annalise Ward, Mo Woods, and Dana Haney. I think Dana and Mo are also in the audience today, which is wonderful. Without further ado, I will share my screen and we can get going. Okay, so I just want to start by saying, I just want to draw attention, kind of as the last speaker did as well, that we've seen an uptick in, hate against anti-LGBTQ groups specifically over the last couple of years. And we've also seen an uptick in the introduction of anti-trans bills specifically across governmental bodies in the last couple of years. So for example, as of this month, over 40 states have proposed some sort of anti-trans legislation as of 2024. And currently there are 479 active bills in state legislators currently that are anti-trans. In the past few years, we've seen 85 anti-trans bills that have passed at a state level, and we've seen 125 that have failed. And there's also been a surge in individuals affiliated with the far right running for and being elected to federal, state, and local government bodies. Many of the anti-trans bills introduced thus far have targeted individuals' ability to access gender-affirming healthcare, access public facilities such as bathrooms, their ability to participate in athletics and educational content that's presented at schools. Additionally, a growing number of these bills have begun to target youth under the guise of parental rights. Prior literature has demonstrated that a wide variety of state-level characteristics for governmental bodies are associated with either passing protections for the LGBTQ plus community or associated with anti-LGBTQ policies. Common legislation protections. Legislation that protects the LGBTQ plus community includes laws criminalizing hate crimes that target the community and anti-discrimination laws. Researchers have found that states' geographical region, proximity to states with similar political leanings, and population demographics such as educational attainment and percentage of same-sex households are all positively associated with the adoption of pro-LGBTQ plus policies. Higher rates of hate crime reporting have been associated with states who have high rates of urbanization in LGBTQ plus social movement organizations, as well as split political elites. However, research has found mixed results for measures of urbanization, immigration, crime rates, socioeconomic status, all in predicting the adoption of hate crime legislation legislation for LGBTQ plus populations. With this said, adoption of anti-LGBTQ plus hate crime legislation has been sparse across the US until recently. Gibbs' 2018 work demonstrates the proposal of anti-LGBTQ plus bills at a state level are correlated with states' level of conservatism, legislative makeup, and proximity to other states. Our data set data range from 2020 to 2023 for this. Examples of anti-trans legislation include restricting access to gender-affirming care, restricting teachers and staff from correctly gendering trans or gender-expansive students, and banning trans students from participating in sports, to name a few examples. However, for today's presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the total number of anti-trans legislation that were introduced in 2023 without distinguishing among the bills if they passed or failed. So for this study, we're looking at a wide range of independent variables. We're pulling from well-known data sets, including the American Community Survey, the Human Rights Campaign, Institute for Research and Education on Human Rights, the Southern Poverty Law Center, the CDC, and ACLID. In total, we have over 30 variables that we're assessing that range from state demographic characteristics, such as poverty rates and racial compositions, crime statistics, such as the number of transgender people murdered, states' religious and legislature compositions, voting access in each state, and rates of pro-LGBTQ+ demonstrations and protections, as well as anti-LGBTQ+ groups, such as hate groups, including the Proud Boys, and far-right legislators that have been elected. Thus far, we have completed exploratory and confirmatory factor analyses, which capture latent state characteristics. This is a capture of a stagnant time and space. It's not predictive of the bill's ultimate fate. We also grouped state characteristics into categories of anti and pro-LGBTQ+ characteristics, state spending, economic disadvantage, religiosity, population diversity, and we included the control variables of southern states, percent Black, and population size. So this table is looking at the descriptive, so overall, we are grouping a couple different variables into these larger descriptors. So for pro-LGBTQ+ characteristics, we're looking at percent LGBTQ, percent of same-sex households in a state, total LGBTQ elected officials, the democracy score, human rights scorecard for the state, and that's just looking at how protective the state is of LGBTQ+ rights, or how many anti-LGBTQ laws they have overall, and summing those two things. Percent favoring LGBTQ populations in the state, and the number or the percentage of individuals who oppose religious refusals for service for that population. For variables of anti-LGBTQ characteristics, we grouped these into two main categories. One that's looking at hate groups and violence, extremism towards these groups. So that's number of hate groups, Moms for Liberty chapters, transgender homicide counts, and anti-LGBTQ+ protests. For anti-LGBTQ characteristics, for the conservative and political climate, we looked at Republican governor, the percent that favored Trump, the percentage that voted for Trump in 2020, and the alt-right legislator counts. For variables for state spending, that includes GDP, K-12 spending per capita, police spending per capita, and public welfare per capita. And economic disadvantage was measured by percent of high school dropouts, percent of poverty rates, percent unemployed, and deaths in despair. And lastly, for religiosity, we're looking at percent white evangelical congregations per 100,000 and percent of religious adherence per state. For population diversity, this is percent urban, Hispanic, and foreign born. And as I mentioned earlier, the control variables are southern states, percent Black, and population size. Okay. So now we're going to break down these states into three different categories. So we have states that are in 2023 proposed 3 or fewer bills. There are 16 of those states. There's another 16 that fall into the category of 4 to 9 bills proposed in 2023. And then the remaining 18 states proposed 10 or more in 2023. And this is just kind of a little bit more aesthetic view of that. As you can see, Ohio, I believe, had 8 bills proposed in 2023. Some states such as Texas or Florida that are on the news frequently had upwards of 20. But this is just kind of showing the diversity overall. We see New England has generally fewer bills proposed overall as well. So this table is presenting the descriptive statistics by state with low, average, and high counts of anti-trans legislation introduced in 2023. States with few bills have higher percentages of LGBTQ plus populations, a higher percentage of same-sex households, more LGBTQ identified elected officials, higher positive human rights scores, higher democracy scores, and a greater percentage of populations that favor LGBTQ plus protections and oppose businesses' right to refuse service. Although there are no significant differences among states in terms of anti-LGBTQ indicators of hate or violence, states that introduced more bills have higher transgender homicide counts. States that introduce high levels of anti-trans bills have, on average, more conservative and political climates, as indicated by having a Republican governor, population favoring Trump, and votes for Trump in 2020. These descriptive results show that states' characteristics, including state spending, economic disadvantage, and population diversity, do not distinguish between states with low versus average bill counts. On the other hand, states with high bill counts have lower than average spending on education, police, and public welfare compared to states with low bill counts. States with high bill counts also have higher average religious congregations, religious adherence, and populations identifying as white evangelical compared to states with low bill counts. There's no evidence of states differing by population diversity characteristics. However, states with high bill counts are more likely to be represented among southern states. The last table here presents the correlations between each state's characteristics and the total number of bills introduced in each state. As anticipated, almost all indicators of pro-LGBTQ plus characteristics have moderate negative correlations with the number of bills introduced. On the other hand, and contrary to expectations, anti-LGBTQ plus characteristics associated with hate and violence are not associated with the bill counts. However, two indicators of conservative political climate are positively associated with bill counts, including having a Republican governor and percentage of Trump votes. Also, states that spend more on education, policing, and public welfare tend to have lower bill counts, while states with a greater number of religious congregations and identifying as white evangelical have higher bill counts. Once again, there's no evidence that indicators of economic disadvantage or control variables are significantly correlated with the bill counts. So in conclusion, the characteristics that are strongly associated with higher numbers of bill counts are pro-LGBTQ plus state characteristics, anti-LGBTQ plus political characteristics, governmental spending on specifically education, welfare, and policing, and religiosity. And then the non-significant associations with high bill counts are anti-LGBTQ plus characteristics associated with hate and violence, economic disadvantage indicators, and indicators of population diversity. For our next steps for this project, we're hoping to do a multiple variable analysis predicting the counts of anti-LGBTQ plus legislation and an analysis of state characteristics that make states more likely to pass anti-LGBTQ plus legislation versus characteristics that make states more resilient and able to defeat that legislation. And we are also hoping to conduct a content analysis of bills based on support, introduction, and failure in the future to help determine to what degree the content of the bills are affecting when something gains support and the levels of extremism actually presented within the bills. Thank you so much.